The next thing is understanding the market. When it comes to pricing, understanding the market is important. So Felix talked about this in the previous webinar. Understand what the market will bear and what value they put on this. And I think it's hard here for makerspaces because makerspaces aren't really a known entity yet. So perhaps a lot of donors don't really know how much a plastic recycling project should cost, or how much building a new makerspace should cost. They might hear figures of 5,000, they might hear figures of 500,000. And they don't necessarily know because it's such a new market. But if you're selling a product, such as 3D printed writing aids, what you might think about is, well, actually, this is going to a health system. Health systems, public health systems, generally don't have much money. If they're working with vulnerable people, there's going to be a lot of demand. Those people aren't necessarily going to have money either. So the market is very, very price sensitive. So you need it to be very affordable. But, you know, if that same 3D printed writing aid was to be sold, say, in Europe, and you could find a way to affordably ship it to Europe, you might be able to make more money there than, say, in your local area. So, and then the value they put on this, this is actually quite a big challenge. One of the big challenges I've faced before is that, yes, people absolutely want 3D printed prosthetics and orthotics and customized to the individual and all of this, but there's no ability to pay. They value it really highly, but they don't have budgets for it. So even if they want your product, they might actually not have the ability to pay. And the value they put on it isn't necessarily fully understood by them anyway. So a prosthetic leg carved out of wood, that the individual cost of one leg may not be known in a public health system, because what they know is the cost of the labor, and they might know roughly how long it takes, but that will be very, very hard to estimate. You know, whereas a 3D printed, if you put a price on a 3D printed prosthetic, they might value the process, but you know, it could be more expensive, and there's so many hidden costs in the existing system. They actually might look at your price and go, oh my God, no, we can't afford 2,000 of these a year. So there is there's a real tension about what the market will bear and what value they put on this. It depends who your market is. Again, you know, this is about doing market dialogues and finding markets that have a range of ability to pay. And generally, generally you need to try and sort of work in sectors like banking and advertising and hotels that might have higher levels of ability to pay than, say, a local clinic or a local school, or local people, children that may not have any ability to pay. Remember that toy companies often target parents as much as they target the children, because the parents are the ones that actually buy the toys. What industry is it? I think I've mentioned this just briefly now. If it's advertising or banking, they can probably, or tourism, they can probably pay more than, say, the health sector. But understanding that market's really important. But I think it's also a little bit about, is this a highly regulated sector, like medical sector or children's toys? Or is it a more free and open sector, like in advertising, where you might just be making, or in the movie industry, where you're just making a prop that's one-off? demand and supply, supply and demand. The understanding the market. People talk about demand and supply. The demand is isn't necessarily from the users. It's often from the people who pay, and the ability to supply might be beyond you. That's why we're interested in distributed manufacturing. But it is, those things don't necessarily line up, basically. It is, the other thing is demand is very dispersed often, and the supply is very concentrated. So they don't often fit together very well, which is why a lot of procurement goes global to try and find that market fit. What you often find is an awful lot of supply, and they have to persuade people to have demand. So advertising, marketing, they've made a product that they want, that somebody wants to sell. Now they need to market it, and you've got to go and generate demand. So actually, in terms of understanding the market, is this a new thing that has to be introduced and sensitized? That takes time and money. Or is this something that the demand already exists for, and the ability to pay already exists for? And then maybe you can figure out what you can do, some experiments around the correct price point. So testing the market, exactly, to find that sensitivity to price. Now, this on a per product basis, or a per client basis, that might be reasonably straightforward to do. But when it comes to grants, it can be quite hard. And I think it's more about having a conversation with the donor to figure out really what's in their mind. What do they expect to get in return for the grant that they give? And the challenge here is that makerspaces and hardware are generally a more expensive option than, say, software and incubation hubs. So, teaching maths and English might be more impactful, say, in terms of more measurable, say, than perhaps, because you can do exams, than perhaps making, which might be more subjective. So I think there's a sense in which the market, the market is so broad when it comes to grants and impact, that what you've got to find is the right kind of donor with the right kind of interest. And then you really work with them to figure out, well, is this a 20,000 project or a 50,000 project or whatever it might be.